So I read The
Well,
Name of the Rose, Umberto Eco. Now, it was good. It was fairly good. But it wasn't excellent. And it's got like a really big reputation, and I kind of thought like it was meant to be something fantastic. It was a lot better than the other Umberto Eco book we did recently, Numero Zero. So that's an improvement. It's quite a big one there as well. It's 500 pages.
is it that much? Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
there is a lot going on in it, and it's not bad. It's just not amazing. But I'm gonna go ahead and just give it a yeah, 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 because overall I did enjoy it. So it's kind of set. Obviously, we're way in the past. We're in a monastery, essentially. So it almost reminded me of the beginnings of Narcissus and Goldman, like that kind of vibe.
Hmm. Okay.
Except it's a very massively different story
It, not in Germany and not of like
in Italy,
the
but there are
level. Yeah.
some of the monks that are German also that have moved across.
Oh.
And
Does it
also
also
there's
take place during the Black Plague?
you know what? When does it take place? That would be good to know. I do not know,
Hmm.
but I'll tell you this. At one point, the Inquisition happens, which is not ideal.
Finnish
So that
Inquisition was
must help.
1400s?
Yeah, so that should help us to date it, right?
I know I just
1400s. I
looked
think
this
we
up.
we did this last time.
Was it
So,
already last time?
I- or it
Yeah.
was on one of the Playboys, but it was yeah, I think it was on the Lope de Vega.
Okay. Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
wasn't a month ago. But
Yeah, it
yeah,
lasted
so
from 1400s to apparently even the 1800s,
oh
but
wow, I didn't know it was
mm,
that long.
I didn't either. Hmm.
So
Did not expect it.
the book is kind of imagine we mix a bunch of monks in their monastery doing their usual typical thing. There's a lot of religious discussion, there's some philosophical discussion, um, but then it turns into a murder mystery, basically. Not quite an Agatha Christie, but essentially there are some murders, and they're trying to figure out who done it, essentially. And then the Inquisition comes, and it's quite funny. I'll get to that later because there's a really funny moment with them actually, despite the fact that it's also really sad, and what they do is really sexist. So our main chap is called William, and I think he's a bit of a novice. I think he's also illiterate, but he's kind of impaired with another monk who, I mean, I don't know if this is how it was meant to be taken. I saw it kind of as his, when you get a new job and they'll give you like a buddy system and they'll be like, here's a more
Hmm.
experienced member of staff that you can kind of shadow a little bit. Like that's kind of how I saw it. Because this other guy's like telling him a lot of stuff and like, helping him out. He's much more educated. He can not only read Latin, but also Greek and this kind of stuff. He recognized Arabic, although I don't think he could necessarily read it perfectly. Um, so this guy's more of a scholar, and our guy's a bit more uneducated. But they're in this order,
Hmm.
and they're wanting to live the life they can. So there is one moment, again, very similar to Narcissus and Goldman, where our fellow strays vis-a-vis the ladies, and when he goes and sort of says to his mentor, I did a thing. I think I wasn't supposed to have sex with that beautiful lady. The mentor says, well, you weren't, but you're not the first person to do it, and you won't be the last. Just write it off, use it as a learning experience for your own character development, and obviously, definitely don't do it again. So, okay, that could have been worse. He doesn't
So
get
he's already
kicked
like
out.
Goldman. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but he doesn't get kicked out.
Now is the rest of the book just him going and finding ladies to sleep with?
It's not. Actually, he doesn't do it again. So it's perfect.
Oh.
So yeah, it's the opposite in a way, but it starts the same. But there's a lot of philosophical discussion, and one of the strangest points is, did Jesus laugh? And this takes up a lot more time than you would think.
But we do know that he wept.
We know that he wept.
Is that all
Um,
they're going off of?
no, they discuss various passages, and also, medieval philosophy, scholastic philosophy is almost entirely just interpretations of Christian doctrine. Um, and they
Hmm.
go in on and on and on about it. And there's different factions, and they're violently interested in this question. about whether Jesus laughed, because if Jesus didn't laugh, they shouldn't laugh.
Mm,
So then they should be like super serious and strict, almost Puritan kind of vibes. Whereas the other
yeah.
side are like, well, we can have a bit of fun and be human because, even Jesus laughed. So that's actually an important point for them. But it comes up like three times across the book. And it's like, I don't think that's as important as you think it is, lads. But, you work away there.
Yeah, it's the same thing with having the laws against dancing. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah,
Like there are places that still have those types of laws within the states, I know. I don't know how they exist.
it's
Like,
so strange.
yeah,
But
Puritan culture,
it's
absolutely
yeah, we had it
medieval.
here with
Yeah.
Cromwell and everything. It's disgusting. So our friend, the mentor, is called, I'm just double checking the pronunciation, Ubertino. And Ubertino mentions, he does a lot of name dropping. He's like, oh yeah, I remember a close friend of mine had these logical discussions, a certain William of Ockham, he of
Okay.
Occam's razor.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they also talk about Sir Francis Bacon a couple of times. And they're like, oh, yeah, that loony, he thinks that people will be able to fly and everything. And then they discuss that. And we have an invention in the book. They're like, well, based on something we were told, we can actually use glass. I think this also was supposed to have come from Bacon. They say we can use glass to help us see. And the guy has like prototype glasses, basically. And then he's like, I think if you modify the thickness, it'll work for different people. And it's like really groundbreaking stuff, which is fantastic because we're both sitting here with glasses today.
Hmm.
So that's kind of cool.
Well, wasn't Bacon as well like the father of science? Like he came up with the scientific method and
Yes,
uh,
Bacon is I don't know a massive amount about him. I've seen him as he kind of bridges the gap between philosophy and science a little bit, I think.
yeah, he's where like the Enlightenment kind of started, it seems like, or around that era at the very
Yeah.
least. So he's the one who like brought in the scientific method, but the way I remember him learning about him in like secondary school was that yeah, he was more philosopher than scientist. He just came up with this that it branched off into science later on.
Yeah, I think so.
But
Which I suppose had to happen, really. Someone had to, and not just him, multiple people had to bridge that gap, and you've got people who came up with things like falsifiability and all that kind of stuff later. So yeah, the beginnings of science, I suppose, came from philosophy. Even Descartes did bits and pieces.
yeah, Descartes was, I think, a bit more mathematician than anything else.
But more maths, probably, yeah.
Yeah,
You give us
because I remember
the
studying
X and Y
him and
axes and everything. Yeah.
Cartesian coordinate system. Like, I mean, it's from him, like Descartes, Cartesian,
Yeah.
but also like he had geometry and all that. That yeah, slightly related to trigonometry from India.
Hmm. There's a nice quote here. Often the learned man must make seem magic certain books that are not magic, but simply good science, in order to preserve them from indiscreet eyes. And there's a lot of this in the book, which is almost like, yeah, certain people are ignorant and can't really be trusted with science or with like actual knowledge. And that exemplifies it. And they attribute it to Bacon, or his, maybe not a quote, but at least kind of paraphrasing him. But there's a lot of that in the book. And they say, learning does not consist only of knowing what we can or can do, sorry, what we can't or can do, but of knowing what we could or should, what we could not, what we could or couldn't, or sorry, let me say that better, should or shouldn't do. So
Hmm.
that is kind of the where philosophy and science should couple each other, right? Like science can tell you what is, how what is existing in the natural world, and then philosophy can tell you like how you ought to act as a human, and those kind of things. So that's what they're touching on a
Yeah,
lot here.
moral, ethical
Yeah,
arguments.
and that's the kind
Okay.
of stuff that was massive in this time period, with scholastic philosophy. But anyway, back to our characters. So we have William, we have Ubertino. Basically, the main principle here is there's a massive freaking library, okay? There's like 50 or 60 rooms in it. Like the world's biggest library at this time. And no one's allowed into the library except the librarian. So all the other monks, some of them, the more high up monks, might have like a list of certain books that they're able to, consult. But they can't get in to see them. So think about the Maclay Library at Queen's when you've got that special collections room and you have to like ask the lady at the desk like to let you in and see a special book
Yeah,
and she brings it
yeah.
out to you. It's kind of like that.
It reminds me kind of like The Giver in some ways. I don't know if you ever read that
I
book.
didn't.
It's one that we read, I think, in middle school, a short story kind of maybe like 100 pages.
Oh.
Basically, it's you might actually really like it. It's a society in which like you are given a job at a certain age, like 16 or whatever, and it's going to be like you become a politician, almost like Brave New World-ish, but the giver is the one with the memories and the knowledge. So like some of his memories are of like it's almost magical. He's able to like remember going down like on a toboggan or something and enjoying the snow and the beauty of that
Mm.
because it no longer exists in the society. So he's able to then give that memory to the next person who will be the giver. So he's
Yeah.
the giver's the one who has all of those memories and all that. But some of them are bad, like some of them are broken bones and stuff. Um,
This is
and
similar.
it's
You go ahead.
it's like that, but it's much more dystopian than
Okay.
yeah.
Although this is just similar in what you said, the librarian before he dies will then take an assistant in his later years and pass the knowledge on to him so that he can become the next librarian, you know?
It is very similar to that case,
Mm.
yeah.
But they decide that there's some, books they want. There's some secret stuff happening. There's a bit of mystery, and I guess they're living in medieval times, and of course there's no lights at night, so it's very easy for people to go sneaking around. And all the time, it's like at one point it's funny because there's four people separately and independently sneaking around in the same bit of forest, and they start to find each other. And some of them see the others, and some of them don't see the others. So then they know when they're able to gossip about when he was out when the murder happened and all this kind of stuff. Um,
Mm.
so it's that. But this library, they try to draw up a plan of it, and it's got like hexagonal side rooms, but heptagonal center rooms. And then some of them have doors to other rooms, and some of them don't have as many doors as others, or the doors have been blocked up. So they're trying to like navigate around this library to see what they can find in there. And they start finding amazing works in Latin, in Greek, in Arabic, in all sorts of languages. Um, and it's quite fantastic. One of the central premises of this book is finding the second part of Aristotle's Poetics, which was apparently
Hmm.
lost.
Oh, was it? I don't
I
remember
didn't
that.
know that. I've read some Aristotle, but I've not read it all the way I have with, say, Plato.
Yeah, and I've
Um,
read Poetics, but I don't remember some of it being lost. It's relatively short.
yeah, I don't know if this is like it was lost at the time or it is still lost and what we have is incomplete. I didn't bother to check, to be perfectly honest. But anyway, so a murder happens and they blame a couple of different people. They see one guy was sneaking out at night. There's this guy Malachi. They kind of blame him because he's a bit suspicious just in general. They talk to the botanist because they think maybe there's been some kind of like poison, situation. So then they wonder if it was him, and they do a bit of sleuthing, basically. I don't want to give too many spoilers, but they do a bit of sleuthing, and then a second murder happens, so they start to get okay. I think basically their suspect dies. So then it's like,
Uh,
well, it wasn't him. And there's like secret passages in the library where if you reach up behind a painting, there's like a little lever behind the painting, and that opens a secret door and all this kind of stuff. So it's a bit Scooby-Doo. But the funny thing is, our guy, sorry, that's not funny. What's the opposite word? Horrific and sad. Our guy sleeps with this girl, and he kind of has some affection for her. It turns out that someone else is doing this as well. So someone else is, I think, potentially regularly, sleeping with a girl from outside. Then the Inquisitor comes, and he finds out about it. So he punishes the monk, but he has the girl burnt to death. And our main
huh.
guy, William, is kind of like, this is not fair because why was you know, the monk broke his vows. She didn't, technically. Why is she being murdered? And he's just being like, slap on the wrist or something. And they basically tell him, be quiet, or the same will happen to you because you know, it's the Inquisition. So there you go.
Yeah, yeah. It's all about like controlling women in those times as well.
Yeah.
Well, those times, these times.
Still, almost still, yeah. But our guy's a bit naive though, because they say, so this woman probably has done this before. She has probably offered herself in exchange for food to feed her starving family. And the guy's like, so she's a harlot. Well then. And the guy's like, no, she's a poor, sad, starving girl. And that was like a really poignant line for me, where the guy jumped immediately to like moral criticism. And the other guy, who is a higher up monk and in theory should still be condemning her, was like, no, I have a lot of sympathy for this poor, starving woman and her family.
But that's also like you'd hope to see that in a lot of cases. I know it's a cliche in all sorts of books and movies, But I love when you have the like elder person stand up and say like, so maybe it's against what you all believe, but in my experience, and they have so much experience,
Mm,
like able to say like, no, this is wrong. Let's actually calm down and listen.
yeah,
Um,
and that's nice. There's
so
a lot of just
it's a wise
irrelevant
elder.
religious debate as well. There's something like, it was foretold that after 1,000 years of paradise, of the rule of the just, would come the Antichrist, but he hasn't come. So then they start, which religious people still do today, redefining the terms. Oh, well, the rule of the just doesn't start from when Jesus died. It starts from when Constantine spread Christianity. So that buys us 300 years, and it's all this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. And I don't know how accepted it is, but the general notion about like 666 is that like it was the Hebrew numbering system for like names. I
okay.
don't know as much like what it's called, but yeah, 666 would be Nero.
Yeah,
Like
okay.
if you add up the letters of his name, it equals 666.
I
So
will not give my thoughts on Nero. It might drive away some listeners. Um,
he was not good, but he wasn't the worst.
eh. It's funny though because the chapter headings are the most spoilerific I've ever seen. Like chapter heading in which the edificium is basically the building. It's same root as like edificio in Spanish today, in which the building is entered, a mysterious visitor discovered, a secret message with necromantic signs is found, and also a book is found, but then promptly vanishes to be sought through many subsequent chapters. Nor is the theft of William's precious lenses the last of his vicissitudes. And it's like, okay, well, you've given it all. You ever see like a movie trailer that just shows the entire movie? Like that's what a lot of these chapter headings are doing. There's no
Okay, so
surprise.
yeah. Uh, well, some people don't like spoilers. I'm generally okay with them.
I don't mind. My favorite moment is the Inquisitor's an ass, and he's doing a lot of trickery, and it's almost like no matter what you say, you're getting condemned.
Oh yeah, yeah, that makes
You
sense.
can't win. And he'll do a lot of wordplay. It kind of reminds me of like a hotshot lawyer in a Hollywood movie or something, like no matter what you say, he's going to tie you up in circles. And he's asking, well, do you believe in these doctrines? And the guy sort of stammers out a response, and he's like, aha, but you're saying that you believe in the doctrines I believe, but you haven't specified what you believe. And he's just constantly going on at him. And
You see, I
then,
don't even see it like that. I see it more like obsolete man, like
mm,
Twilight Zone. You have the person in the government saying, "Ah, so you believe that all communists are good people, or like all fascists are good?" And like, what? That's
yeah,
not what I said.
didn't say that. But the best moment is after the Inquisitor fixes everything and deals with it all, another murder happens. And someone just gives him a little backhanded compliment, like, oh, it's very curious that there'll be another murder after you came in here and caught the culprit and dealt with everything. And the Inquisitor is not happy. And I kind of, that was actually my favorite moment from the whole book. But look, I'm dwelling too much, so I'm just gonna wrap it up by saying we end up with the guy's glasses do get lost. So they delays them in being able to read the books and the Arabic and everything. We end up with a poisoned book. Ingenious, the pages of the book are poisoned, so that when our guy reads it, he starts hallucinating and would have potentially died if another monk hadn't been there to see it happening and see him raving and take him away from the fumes, um,
Oh, that's kind of
just
fun.
in due time. And then they find eventually the culprit, but I won't say who it is. And of course, the poison book is the Poetics, the Aristotle. So the whole book is all about Aristotle's Poetics, basically,
Oh,
and murders. But good
that
book.
actually sounds pretty good.
A little bit long, a little bit confusing in parts. I think it maybe could have been told a bit more straightforward, a bit simpler, but it was fine. I enjoyed it well enough.
Hmm.
Cool.
That sounds like a lot of